up in Gwinnett County. Is this Gwinnett?
Yes.
Yeah, Gwinnett. With Keeve, like Steve, except no. Yeah. So, Mr. Keeve had contacted me a couple weeks back, maybe about 3 weeks ago, asking me to build his shower. But when he sent me the pictures, he had already done all the prep work, and the prep work was, you know, a little touch and go. And you know, I have a lot of homeowners, DIYers, people who send me pictures of, you know, the after the fact where they have built their own shower, and I usually post them on my community tab because I'm very proud of them that they're able to do their own thing. And a lot of times they give me credit for having built their shower. And I think Keeve had gotten into the same rabbit hole, YouTube University, of finding out information about how to build a shower. So you stumbled on a bunch of videos, including mine, and kind of figure it out on your own how to make this happen from what it was. What was it before? Builder's grade?
Yeah, just a builder's grade fiberglass shower.
Oh, as an insert. Okay.
Yeah, an insert.
So he got rid of that and started doing all the prep work and everything. And when I saw the pictures, I'm like, ooh, there are a couple of problems, and those problems became more clear when I showed up. So there was a little. I'm going to call it mixing of material. There's a little mixing of material going on. So he decided to go with Curdy, and you see he also used these little water deep penetration gadgets. I think he used one up on the shower head too. I don't think that's necessary. Water doesn't go backwards like that. We don't have the old valves where water could potentially go in the opposite direction. It only goes in the front now with the valves that we have now, because they don't have all the seats and washers and packing that we used to have before. That being said, you know, he did an okay job. And again, that is very subjective on how to use some of that material and how well some people do it and how well they don't. Another thing that he used was a plastic insert for the niche. And I don't like the plastic inserts, mainly because you're relegated to a certain standard size, which they make. I think they've grown wider and taller now, but regardless, I like to build my own niches. But that plastic insert has a flange around it, and the flange didn't quite work correctly. I don't know if you can pull up a picture of what it looked like.
Yeah, it's actually a Curdy one.
Yeah, the prefab.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the prefab.
That was before.
Yeah, so the prefab niche, and that's a before with all the Curdy material all over it and everything, before he started doing the pan. And you know, I got to give him credit because, you know, he had to go through and fill in that concrete hole, you know, after he did the drain and all that stuff, and he used a nice drain. I think, is that Schluter also?
Yeah, that's a Flow FX.
Oh, so so shout out to Isaac, because Flow Effects drain he used, and he got the proprietary drain cover, which is kind of cool. It's one little slot on there. I don't know how well a slanted opening will work as far as, you know, water getting in.
Oh, that's just.
Oh, is that just the cover?
Yeah, that's just.
Oh, okay. So we don't get to see the pretty thing right now. Okay.
I mean, I have it.
Yeah, it don't matter. Anyway, so he used that Flow Effects Curdy Schluter, and then he used what was it that you used? Hardybacker. So the Hardybacker, I think, is totally unnecessary. So all of the walls got Hardybacker on it, and the problem that he ran into is marrying up the Hardybacker with the existing sheetrock, which is somewhere around this area. And so what happened is the Hardybacker was a little thicker than what the drywall was, and he didn't know how to feather that out or to get it, you know, like kind of monolithic so that it would kind of flow, that would be level and all that stuff. And that's a few of the problems that I ran into. You have a picture of that? Yeah, I don't know if you can see it too well. So let's see if my camera shows it up. Yeah, it does. And so you see a little bump out of the edges of that flange on the niche, but then also on the walls. And you can't see it too good on the pictures. But when I showed up, and then he used the waterproofer over that, which I highly recommend if you're going to use Curdy on your walls and where the seams come together, waterproof that too, because they're calling for a thin set. All set is what he used, but still, you know, that's kind of the Achilles heel. If water gets through, it's going to get through that. Having said that, water doesn't get through walls. I've never once in over 20 years of doing this had a failure of walls because it wasn't waterproof. just doesn't happen. I've been on sheetrock showers before with builder's grade tile, and you might have some mold and mildew issues, but the wall hasn't failed. Only on a tub does the wall fail like that because water is wicking up into the sheetrock. Having said that, he didn't use sheetrock, he used Hardybacker, which became kind of problematic for me because I had to overcome a lot of this stuff. And so as much as he did on this shower, he didn't want to do, and he did the floor too. So he tiled this floor prior to me showing up and grouted it. So I'm not gonna criticize you too much, Keith. You know, I'm really not. But I'm gonna say it's not a bad job. It's not a job that I would do. I would critique, and I think most tile guys critique their own work more than, you know, the customers do. There's a lot of ridges, there's a lot of lippage, you know, on a lot of this stuff. But Keith had explained to me before, there's a couple of dips. And what he explained to me before, this was on a 12 by 12 mat, and the mats aren't always the best mats, you know, and the glue isn't always the best glue. So he ran into the problem I run into sometimes where you get the mat wet and the tiles start falling off of the mat, and it becomes very problematic. A good mosaic, and I'm going to call this mosaic by default because it comes on a mat, a good matte mosaic is going to have a slight bend. When you take it out of the package, it has a slight bend to it, but it doesn't want to just crumble down and just fall, you know, like literally fall apart, because some of the tile could come off of the mat. Those type of tile are very, very difficult and problematic to work with, especially setting them, even if you don't get them wet to cut the perimeter and all that stuff, you're going to get them wet eventually with the thin set. So that becomes a problem because then they want to slide around and all that stuff, and they're not good. So if you're going to get a mosaic, make sure when you take it out of the mat that it just bends slightly. That means that the backer, the fiberglass mesh, is not only really solid and you can work with it, but more than likely that mesh is tied to the tile very well where it's not going to slide off of the mat. But you know, it's his job, and you know, he has he has to live with it. It's just something that, you know, takes some time and care and all that stuff. When you push it all down eventually, I think what he had told me that maybe he used a little bit too much thin set. Didn't you tell me that? Yeah. And you had to like take a bunch of that out. Dig it out and all that stuff. It's not a bad job. I like his own little design that he made around there with the tile. To kind of, you know, make that pretty and all that stuff. And he also did the backsplash, the same tile and the backsplash. But when he got to the backsplash, tiling and grouting that and tiling and grouting that, he decided he didn't want to do the rest. So he asked me if I could come in and just tile everything. And I'm like, but you did so well on all the rest of the stuff. And so then I just realized yesterday we were talking about this, and you called the tile whisperer. Because anytime you have a problem with something, dogs or whatever, you call the dog whisperer, you know, or the tile whisperer as it were. And so there was a lot of problems that he knew he was going to run into, and so he just handed those problems to me. And I didn't know how problematic it would be until I started setting the tile and had to overcome a lot of these things. And if you see on the side here where the Schluter trim is at, that's the bump out that he had. So it's kind of flat to the wall here, and then it starts to bump out. Sorry, this is bumped out, and then it starts to dip in over here, and I can't overcome that. I have to follow my tile. I can't follow the wall because the tile doesn't bend, and that's how he ended up with, you know, like a 3/4 inch gap there. And that's unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. I couldn't overcome that unless I dismantled all the work that he did, and I wasn't going to do that because of the curdy was stuck to it and all that stuff, blah blah blah. Anyway, I ended up coming in here and doing all this tile and you know, putting the box Schluter, which I really like. This box Schluter gives you the profile both on the top and the side, which I think was a great idea. This is a very soft stone. This is marble, and because it's a soft stone, it's a little problematic to work with because, you know, where the veins are at and stuff like that, it tends to crack and fail, and then, you know, you're doing multiple cuts and multiple cuts. We ran over a lot of different design ideas. I had originally come in and talked about building this wall up because it doesn't make any sense to have to go through all this extreme work to finish out this little, I call it a flower pot wall. Because there's...
But my cat likes to sit there when we're in the shower.
Really?
Yeah, the cat sits there and watches us in the shower, so that's what
no doubt. Yeah. The cat actually sits there?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So the cat chair. I wasn't into the cat chair because I didn't know what I didn't know until now, but I suggested just bumping this out, not only bumping this out and bringing it up, but also bumping the curb out. You have another 2 or 3 square feet, and that's what I would always suggest. So what I would have done, because we're finite with the door trim, I would have actually done one step better, and I would have bumped this wall out to here, and that would have added probably 4 or 5 square feet more to this shower. This bathroom being a master bathroom, which arguably is kind of small in comparison to a lot of master bathrooms that I run into, that would have given you a much bigger shower. That would have been my idea. But we went with Keith's idea of doing the cat wall, and the cat wall turned out, you know, not too bad. You know, I had to do, there was no way to do the trim onto the backsplash of the tub without having to recess this wall with the trim and all that stuff. And so it turned out okay. We just got through grouting, so there's a little bit of haze and stuff like that going on. It'll look much better when it's all wiped down and all that stuff. The other problem was that he didn't save anything having to do with the shower, and I knew that my tile would be much wider and my thin set would be much wider because I had the same conundrum here as I did this wall. This wall was kind of flat here and then it kind of dipped down here, so there was a lot more thin set used in here in order to bump that out and make that all flush. And then he decided to do you know, the half pattern and all that stuff. And so, you know, it turned out okay. It turned out, you know, not too bad. We also did the windowsill design around the niche, meaning that this piece right here, it looks like marble, but it's not. And so he's able to find a piece, quartz, that replicates marble. And so I had done this quite often, and I like it, especially when I'm doing Schluter, because I can just do the Schluter around the top and the sides, and you know, the bottom's already done, and we did it all the way to the top. You know, a lot of little cuts going on, and so that's kind of, you know, I'm critiquing my own work as if I came in here and it was somebody else's job. So those little things that I see, you know, kind of bother me, but there's not much I can do about it. But offer explanations as to why I did things the way I did. And I think the math worked out where we split the difference. We didn't have a full tile. We would have ended up with a sliver. What was it? Is it 3/4?
Yeah.
It was like a 3/4 or 1 inch sliver at the top if we had done full tile. So we just decided to split the difference of 6 inches and 4 inches or whatever that is. It's 12. It's literally a 12 by 24, dead on, which I love because tile is never that. But anyway, that's my explanation of what's going on and how I got involved in it, and it took about 3 or 4 days. Oh yeah, and
the short video you made about splitting the tile in half, that was for this shower because when I built my curb, I only built it 4 inches wide. So then
because you made it out of brick, right?
Poured concrete.
Poured concrete.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah.
That's when I made the form for it, and I put lag bolts in, as you know, instead of like rebar to keep it together and hold it to the floor.
Okay.
But had I known about the pre-made 6-inch stuff that you can get, I would have made it wider, but I didn't. So when I made it that size, we were limited because otherwise, with the 6-inch, we would have had to build way out in order to make it flush. But and then I had that curb custom made at a stone shop
Prior to me.
yeah, so we were stuck with it because I already, paid for it and couldn't return it. So because of the width of the curb and the thickness of the tile and the thin set, the only way to get everything flush was for him to have to trim those 2 front tiles in half, which, as you can see, turned out incredible.
Yeah, and I remember when I did that, and I do what I call shaving of the tile. There's been probably, I don't know, a dozen times that I've had to do that because it becomes the only option. And so when I was cutting that the other day, I think that was one of the tile whisperer tricks that you had no idea, because
Yeah,
I said, let me overcome this.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
So these are almost exactly 24-inch tile. And short explanation, they're about, what, 3/8? About 3/8 thick. And I had to shave about half of that off of those 2 front ones in order for that to fit, because it wouldn't fit with thin set and all that stuff. In fact, both the tile on the inside and the outside, if I put them up against each other with no thin set up against that curb, it would have been flush. So the only way to account for a thin set is to shave the tile. What else did you notice on any of the work that I did that maybe you didn't know or couldn't do, or maybe that was a surprise?
Well, the sluter for sure. To make this corner right here, you had to cut this one on the flat and this one on from the top down and this one from the side down. So in order to make this corner, it had to be two different types of cuts, and it would have took me a while to figure that out. And when I originally bought the sluter, I bought the little connectors that went with it because I figured that would be easier just to make straight cuts. But Bob suggested going with the 45s, which I really like, so I didn't need those connectors anyway.
Yeah, those corner pieces are a little shoddy because when, you know, they rely on thin set. You know, you think that those corner pieces snap into each other, but they don't. And they literally rely on thin set to bring them together. So I don't generally use them. And they're kind of pricey, and he wasn't able to get his hands on them. So just by default, I always do 45s, same as around my niche, I always do 45s. So we just 45'd everything where we could, and you know, it turned out pretty good. There was some issues also here with this tub. When they built this tub, the flange was kind of proud of the wall. And so there was this conundrum that we ran into, and I didn't put it on video or anything, but anyway, we had to set up, because sometimes you do what you have to do. So this tile was actually poking out, and there was nothing I can do about it except probably shave the tile, because everything else set flat and flush and all that stuff except this one back end. So we just measured 110 inches all the way to that door trim, and then Keith was nice enough to come up with a couple of 2x4s that were exactly almost that size, and then I had to shim in a piece there, and then we just kind of cantilevered it in and set it right up against there overnight until it dried. And so that, you know, you just run into these problems and you come out with the solutions, you know, so that everything works right. You know, it's just problematic with some of the prep that was done, both by the builder and by Keith, because the problem about doing, and it's rare that I ever go on a job where I follow somebody else's prep, because the prep has to be on point. I can't bend, and I can't, well, I shave tile, but I can't bend tile, and I can't do some things with tile. So anytime I do prep, it's always predicated, first of all, on the tile, and second of all, more importantly, the type of tile, because type of tile matters. If I know I'm doing penny tile on a floor, for example, I know I can't have any discrepancy whatsoever on that floor, the shower floor pan proper, because that penny tile will follow every little dip and yeah. So I know that my pan has to be perfect. So that's how I decide how my prep goes and how well it's done and all that stuff. And you didn't do a bad job. I didn't have to tear anything out. I just had to overcome. And I think that's why you ended up reaching out to me, because you didn't want to overcome.
Yeah, I did the floor in my other bathroom, and I did this floor, and doing the floor, that's one thing. You know, it's a flat surface. It's, you know, it's easier to get everything right. Plus, on the floor, if you mess up, you can break it out and maybe replace it. But in the shower, you got one shot.
Right.
And if it's not right on that first time, then you're screwed, because if you have to tear some out, then you have to replace everything behind it to get it back. And going vertically like that, you know, something I had never done before, and with the issues with the wall, and I just knew it was probably going to be a little bit more than I could do, and plus I was sort of in a time crunch. We were redoing other things, and I needed to move on, so it would have took me, what it took Bob 4 days to do would have probably took me 2 solid weeks to do, and it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good.
And it would have been less than the 4 days. It would have probably been a 3-day job for me to do this, you know, to do it right. But, you know, I have a lot of other stuff going on, and so I wasn't here like 8-9 hour days either. But that being said, you know, the floor looks awesome. You know, the floor looks great. You could you could pass a bucket test on. You could slide a bucket across here, and you know the lippage on here would be minuscule. So you did good. Did you said you use leveling clips, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but the ones Home Depot sells.
Yeah.
So yeah, I use those for spacers and wedges sometimes, but I never use them for leveling clips. So there's a little bit of that. There are some things that I possibly, as I said, with this wall would have done different and all that stuff. I think Kiva was talking about wanting to do a vertical on this shower. The problem with the vertical is it has to follow the floor in such a way that my ledger board, I couldn't use a ledger board because the ledger board would be in the way of doing the vertical, the half and the full and the half and the full. I could not do that, and I would have to have a level floor, or I would have to make up the difference at the bottom with grout. So in other words, if the floor wasn't completely level, I might have a grout line maybe half an inch thick at one end and not the other if I started with the floor first, trying to set my tile off of the floor rather than doing the back cut with the tile that I did. And back cut is something I'll refer. Do I have a video about back cutting? I think so. I'll put that up in the link up above if somebody wants to know how to do a back cut, because I use ledger boards and do the back cut much easier. But it turned out good, and you know I'm just okay with it. As I said when I started, we are our own worst critic. So some people, when they watch my videos, they're completely unaware when I post a 15 or 20 minute video of the 4 days prior and all the conversation I have with my homeowner and all the consultation and all the decisions that are made. And they think somehow that these are all my decisions, that they're on me, and they're not on me. As I said, I would have had a much bigger shower had it been me and had one solid wall, but it's not my shower. But yeah, so anyway, any last parting words to prospective DIYers, homeowners want to do themselves?
I mean, this, you know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I don't know. After, you know, when I was with Bob the entire time he was doing the show.
The entire time.
And,
let me tell you,
know,
something, how good Keeve was on being my helper. This guy is so on point, even cutting the Schluter out in the garage. I would give him the measurement and he would come back and almost a perfect fit every time. And, you know, just handed me perfect helper. Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect helper. So when you retire, you've got a job with me.
All right. Good deal. Good deal.
But so you wouldn't do it over? You wouldn't try the prep?
Actually, I would. I mean, now that I've seen the mistakes and the issues that I would need to make sure were right before I started, I probably would. I hope I don't ever have to, but I would definitely consider it.
So it's doable. Homeowner could do their own prep and their own tile, really.
If you know, work closely with a professional tiler like Bob and, you know, learned all the tricks.
I didn't pay him for that.
And learned all the tricks. So yeah, I mean, I'd try it again. I'd do it again.
Okay. And what's your profession? IT, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I you know, it's impressive to me because I would never, you know, say 25 years ago, 26 years ago, never attempt to build my own shower. I just wouldn't. Then again, 25 years ago, YouTube University wasn't out there either. So there's that. But yeah, Keith's happy, and I'm somewhat happy. And
me, I am extremely happy, and my wife is ecstatic.
Okay, and that's what matters.
She loves it.
That's what matters the most. And the cat's happy.
It was her design.
Yeah, the cat's happy. He's got his own chair. All right.
So let's hang on. Let's get a. So that's one of my cats. That's Piper, and that's the one that likes to sit there on the ledge and watch us in the shower.
Is that the talker?
No, that's the one you never see.
Okay.
She hides when strangers are here.
Okay. All right. Anyway, it was nice working with you, and you know, like, I really appreciate not only the work and the job and all that stuff, but your presence here. Like, if you hadn't been here, this job would have been less entertaining. For sure.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, I'm out. Hey, if you enjoyed that video and you learned something, consider being a Patreon member. $5, $10, $15 a month would help me greatly produce more videos. I make nothing from YouTube at all. If you're gonna call me for advice,
please donate $50 for 30 minutes. My link to my PayPal and my Patreon account is down below. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get immediate notifications as soon as I post videos. And thank you very much for your support.